Well, this past year has been extremely difficult for everyone, particularly when it comes to our ministry in church, and perhaps even more specifically to those involved in children's ministry. But recently I caught up with two children's workers, Julieanne Ashfield, who's the kids worker in Windsor Baptist, and also Rebekah Ravey, who works for Scripture Union Northern Ireland and is also involved in the kids work in Glengormley Baptist. And I just asked them for some of their reflections of trying to minister to children in this past year in the midst of lockdowns and restrictions, and for them to also share some encouragements that they found as well. Hopefully, this will be helpful and encouraging to you as you then think about entering this next season of restrictions and limitations as you seek to minister to children. Hope you enjoy.
Well, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning into this little stream. We're delighted to be able to join both Julieanne and Rebekah here, who are on the Baptist Youth Children's Committee and who are also very involved in children's ministry in their local church. And Rebekah is involved in SU as well. And we wanted to take this opportunity just to spend a few moments thinking about the challenges of children's ministry in the midst of a pandemic. And we want to just kind of speak to both Julieanne and Rebekah to get some of their reflections from what it's been like to try and minister to children in the midst of these challenging times, just to encourage everyone who's watching as they labour on in children's ministry and try to serve the Lord and serve our children. So, Julieanne and Rebekah, thank you so much for joining with us. Do you want to just begin maybe by telling us a little bit about who you are and where you minister to children and a little bit about your background? And know, Julieanne, if you want to kick us off.
I'm Julieanne and I'm the children's worker in Windsor Baptist Church in Belfast. And I've been the children's worker there for 3 years now, with a bit of a maternity in the middle of that. I'm also a mum to 2 girls as well, so I'm juggling a bit of homeschooling as well, like so many people. And prior to being a children's worker in Windsor, I was an occupational therapist, and I also spent some time in Nigeria. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay.
I'm Rebekah. I'm 23 from Ballinure, the centre of the universe. I'm a member of Glengormley Baptist, where I've kind of been my whole life, and I'm so thankful for the grounding I've had there and just the opportunities I've had to serve in most of the children's ministries that go on there in some capacity over several years. I also do work currently part-time for Scripture Union in East Antrim as a schools worker there, which is just an absolute joy and a privilege to be a part of. So prior to all that, I had been at Belfast Bible College where I was studying, and it was just there that I knew that I just wanted to continue serving in children's ministry whatever way I could.
Thank you both for that. And it's hard to believe that this time a year ago, we probably maybe heard of the word COVID and maybe knew something about what it was if you were in tune with the news. But I think March time took us all by storm. Can you just let the listeners know what life was like for you in your children's ministry before COVID and whenever we were in normality? What was your kind of typical weekly or monthly kids program? What did that look like? Rebekah, do you want to kick us off maybe with church and then talk a little bit about SU as well?
Yeah, so for us in church with the kids, there are really 2 key things, I suppose, that happen throughout the week. Firstly, on a Sunday, we would have our kind of Sunday school kids church program, whatever you would like to label it. We actually have a minibus that you would see driving around Glengormley on a Sunday morning, picking up kids on its way, and they would come in to kind of the first part of the church service and then leave to have their own space for kind of Bible teaching and songs and games and all of that. Just the conversations on the bus sometimes are the best thing, of just hearing where the kids are at and getting to know them a bit better. Another key thing for us in church would be on a Friday night we have our youth clubs. So our junior youth club, which is for primary school age children. And for us at church, we have a lot of kids that would come to that who don't necessarily attend our church services or anything like that. So it's the best way for us to really build those relationships. In terms of SU, really a typical week would just be full of primary school assemblies, RE lessons, SU groups, really just packed through with all of them. So obviously that's been a major change with schools being shut, but beforehand we would have been out and about as much as possible.
Great. What about you, Julieanne?
Yeah, so a Thursday morning, we would have our parent and toddler group, which would be mostly families from the local community that would come along to it. On a Friday evening, we would have our youth club for our older age primary kids, and then on a Sunday would be then our main bulk of our kids' work. We would have our junior church for all primary age kids. We would have a toddler and preschool ministry called Joyful Noise on a Sunday morning as well, and then we would have our creche for the babies as well. And then I also throughout the week would have been involved in some local schools work, doing some assemblies and some scripture unions as well. So it was all in person before COVID, and there was a lot of kids involved, a lot of leaders involved. So yeah, it was busy and fun.
Brilliant. So you both had very busy, full-on in-person programs before COVID hit. We're now a good few months into COVID now, coming up on a year. Do you want to just walk us through, Julieanne, maybe you could kick us off, walk us through kind of your journey of having to adjust programs and plans and strategies, and maybe share some of the things that you tried, things that worked well, things that didn't work well. How has that journey been?
Yeah. So like probably most people watching, we had to go online. And for the most part of the past 10 months, most of it has been online, and we have tried to focus on three main areas in our kids' work. So we've tried to create content for our primary age kids on a Sunday, for our toddlers and preschoolers on a Sunday, and then we've also tried to create content through the week for our parents and toddler families. And this has mostly been done by video. So back to the very first week of lockdown, I thought it was a good idea to introduce a puppet into these videos. And I roped my husband into being the voice of the puppet, and he's called George. Should have brought him along to show you. But 10 months on, and George is still going strong, and George has actually kind of become the face of all of our kids' work, which has been great. So that's been one we highlight. So things have changed a lot. And it's been a steep learning curve. Back in March time, I didn't have a clue how to put a video together or how to edit a video. And there today, I was adding it up. I was finishing editing my 76th video. So it's just crazy. But in regards to the videos, we've tried with the videos to try and make the content as interactive as possible. We've tried to get the kids involved in whatever ways we can, whether it's doing a memory verse or doing actions for the songs. We've also been doing the children's program via Zoom every 3 weeks. And we've been like using the breakout rooms as part of that as well, which has been good to connect in the smaller groups. And then from September to December, we were able to start doing some in-person activities, though we are very limited in our church with space at the moment because we're in the middle of a church move. But we were meeting once a month with the kids on a Friday night, doing a bit of a program, very different, having to pre-book in advance, having limited numbers, having to be socially distant, but it was still really great and encouraging to be able to meet together. We were also then, for those couple of months, running a toddler program on a Saturday morning once a month, where it was lovely to have the families come together for that. So in regards to the part of the question that you were saying about what has changed or what hasn't worked, I think when I reflect on our parent and toddler input, it's probably the thing that has changed the most over the course of the 10 months. At the beginning, we were posting videos online each week, and lots of people were engaging with those, but we found it was actually new people engaging with them, which has been great, but not so much the current families that would have attended Parents and Tots. We have a very, very diverse group of people that attend our Parents and Tots, lots of different cultures, lots of different languages. So we have found that obviously engaging online has been a little bit more difficult. So come September there, we were trying to think of ways to engage the families a little bit more, and then we started making resource boxes to deliver out to the families and for them to collect. So the idea was that they would use the boxes to play along with the videos by doing the crafts along with the videos, which has worked really, really well. And it's definitely something that I would recommend if you have the manpower, if you have the resources to do it, that being able to provide a resource home to families is definitely a great way to engage them. So yeah, that's a little bit about what's been going on over the last 10 months.
Brilliant. It's been I'm sure an exciting journey and a scary journey as well at times, but that's really
A lot of
encouraging to
change.
hear some of the things. Yeah, it's really encouraging to hear. Rebekah, what about you and your journey in the past kind of 10 months?
Yeah, similar to Julieanne in ways. I think initially, like most people in churches, the initial response was kind of just to go move straight to online content because it was all we felt like we could do in those initial days. So I think for us in church, it was just about providing that content and material for the different age groups and preparing those videos and sending them out, which we did. And at first that did work well and it was well received, but I think we all know that kind of the screen fatigue and the novelty of it kind of wore off pretty quickly. And also, as I did mention earlier that some of our kids aren't necessarily that well connected in terms of relationships with their parents and stuff. To bring them actually to get them to watch those videos was quite tricky. So over the summer and kind of in some of those brighter nights when the restrictions weren't as tight, we actually did a lot of home visits and what we've now kind of dubbed as doorstep kids clubs, and that really did just consist of the leaders kind of going out in their bubbles, or I made my mum come along with me on various occasions to really just sit in kids' driveways and in their front gardens, and we had kind of Bible apps on iPads and did some socially distanced games and really just chatted with them and caught up with them. And it really was the most amazing opportunity to just speak to not only the kids, but maybe to other siblings that we don't normally see, or to their parents or guardians, or even sometimes to the next door neighbour who was interested in what was going on. And just being able to have those conversations throughout the summer and some of those brighter nights really was probably some of the most fruitful time that we kind of had through this, just being able to build those connections. And even in terms of us then as leaders and the wider church, I think it really helped us be even intentional in our prayer towards the children's ministry and towards all of that as well. But obviously as the colder, damper, darker nights set in, this became a bit harder, but we still tried to continue with some visits as we could. And even there, just before Christmas, we just went out to the homes simply just to deliver a selection box and a Christmas card, and it gave more opportunity to have some conversations. So that's probably something we hope to continue to do if the restrictions are a bit lighter towards Easter, or something we could do again. We found it really beneficial. In terms of kind of schools work then, it really has been kind of responding to request. It's been very different across different schools, and for different children's workers, even with churches and stuff who are involved in their local schools, if there's been requests for assemblies or for lessons or to visit an SU group, we've just kind of been responding to that as and when we can. I think at first we tried to maybe create a lot of content, some of which maybe wasn't getting used or wasn't kind of hitting the mark with that kind of thing. So it has been easier kind of to respond to requests as and when they come in.
Super. It's been great to hear kind of the journey that both of you have been on in terms of having to adjust your programs and your strategies, but it sounds like there's some real encouragement there. Do you want to just share with us maybe a highlight or two from the past 10 months? You've already maybe shared some already, so either you can reaffirm those or any ones that you haven't shared already. Julieanne, do you want to kick us off with that? Any highlights?
Yeah, so probably the biggest highlight for me has come off the back of our parents and toddler group. So I mentioned earlier that we had been making resource packs, but alongside that in September, we also started to do parents and tots in the local park. So we started doing it outdoors, just in the local park on the Lisburn Road, and it has definitely been probably the highlight over the past 10 months, being able to meet in the local park, doing nursery rhymes, doing a Bible story, being able to do like outdoor nature activities, and the families have just been so receptive to that. There really has been very little available for families, especially young families, new parents as well at this time. So they've been so appreciative of having something that they're able to come along to. And it's been a real outreach as well. Like a lot of the families that have been consistently coming each week just stumbled upon us when they were taking their child to the park. And it's just been amazing to get those new families engaged, and we'll hopefully be able to continue that as things go back to normal, whenever that may be. So we haven't been able to do that since Christmas, and I know obviously from speaking to families, they've greatly missed it. But whenever I think back as well to the beginning of September, whenever we started thinking about doing parents and toddlers in the park, I was asking the church to pray for it. And I made the prayer point of, can you pray for good weather? And I remember making the point, I know this is the impossible, but we have not had to cancel one Parents and Tots in the Park from September right up to Christmas. Every single Thursday morning, it was dry. Like, that is a complete Northern Ireland miracle. Every Thursday, and sometimes it would even start to rain after it was over, but it always stayed dry. So it's just been really amazing. And I actually think it's something, from talking to the team, I think it's something that we will actually continue after all of this is long gone. And it's something we would never have thought to do before. If we were doing a special event for Parents and Tots, it maybe would have been outside on our grounds, but actually being able to take it into the park and doing it on a regular basis, maybe every couple of months, to get new families, to show people what we're doing, and also to change of scenery for the families that come along as well. So that's definitely been our biggest highlight.
Brilliant. That's awesome. Definitely a miracle there. No rain.
Yeah.
Can you keep praying that prayer maybe till the end of lockdown?
For the rest of the week.
Yeah. Rebekah, what about you? Any highlights that stand out?
Yeah, I think just the highlights have been just hearing the amazing stories and the new opportunities that have come out of lockdown. And I think for me, especially at the beginning, I was kind of very skeptical about, were these videos reaching the right people? Were they really being watched? Were they really having an impact? And I suppose that's maybe a perspective thing on my part that needed to change. But just even the simplest things of getting a text from a teacher who has said that, they've watched an assembly with their class and it's given her opportunities to answer questions about God and share her own faith. Or, getting texts from parents, from kids from the church who say they haven't watched them consistently, and that not just the kids are watching them, but their families too, who we don't normally have contact with. And we've been able to send kind of assemblies and RE lessons into schools that we have had no prior connection with, and it's just opened up completely new doors. And we know that more kids and different kids are hearing about God's word, which is just a highlight, been a highlight for me throughout the course of the last year.
Terrific. That's so encouraging. And as we look at the future then, normality will resume at some point. We don't know when that'll be, hopefully sooner rather than later. But as you reflect on the past 10 months and as you look forward then to the time when we will come back into normality, what do you think lessons have you learned, or is there anything that you're going to learn from this last season that you think you'll take into your future in children's ministry? Rebekah, maybe you want to kick us off on that one?
Sure. I think this year, most of us, if not all of us, have had to learn very quickly and kind of grow on the spot, and be willing to change or be more creative or innovative than we have before. And we've had to be willing to kind of try things that we don't know if they'll work, or the kind of trial and error process, which is something, if I'm honest, I've probably been a bit scared of in the past, because you stick to what you know, what works, and kind of avoid the criticism that may come with the new or the trial. But I suppose throughout this year, and just seeing how some new things have worked really well and how some things maybe haven't, that it's okay to kind of try those things. And I suppose for me, as we move forward, it's kind of thinking about how we can continue to do those things and not just return to what we know works or what we've always done or what we're comfortable with, but actually we have found some really good new ways of communicating or connecting with people, and how are we going to integrate those into our new or our continued programs. I think especially for me, just from getting those messages about parents who are able to watch along and do things in their home with their kids, or those teachers who have had the opportunity to be able to share their faith, just how are we able to continue to provide ways for that to continue and happen effectively beyond now as well.
Super. What about you, Julieanne?
Very similar to what Rebekah has been saying. It's that flexibility and being able to try things and not be afraid if it doesn't work. I think as well, I know we'll all be so delighted to get back to in-person content, but I do think that there will be a role for some online whenever things go back to normal. And It's trying those out. And even I'm thinking, before, if you were making an announcement on social media, it would have been very much a written post. But now, people are so used to the videos, it might maybe better to do stuff like that via video, because you do get more engagement. So there might be some stuff that will continue after lockdown. I think as well, it's as we think ahead to things resuming back to normal, how do we keep the relationships going? I actually think, reflecting on the past 10 months, it's a strange thing to say, but I actually think that I've got to know some of the families a lot better, because you've had to be in contact with them a lot more, rather than them just dropping their kids off at check-in, hello, bye-bye, and picking them up, as you've actually had to be in contact, finding out what's going on in their lives. And for me, being relatively new to the church, I definitely have got to know them a lot more. So I think it will be nice to be able to carry that through and think about ways that we can be more relational once things resume in person.
That's great. Thank you both for sharing. That's really helpful. And just finally then, I'm sure there are some children's workers who are watching. They might be full-time, they might just be volunteers with their church, but they maybe feel very discouraged or very frustrated maybe at the moment, that every time a new lockdown is extended, it's kind of feels like a punch to the stomach. What word of encouragement would you give to them, really briefly, at this time, from your own experience and just your own perspective? What word of encouragement would you give to them? Julieanne, maybe you want to take us off on that one?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say, which is so difficult to do, but try not to compare yourself or your church to other churches. And that's so easy to do at the moment because everything is online and it's so easy to see what other churches are doing. But especially don't compare your church to other churches that have more manpower, or you have a kids or youth worker employed. There's only so much that you can do. And if I was to give advice, it would be to maybe choose one area and focus on it and do it well. Most churches might not be able to do online programs for kids, toddlers, parents and tots. That's not going to be realistic, but choosing one thing and doing it well, and trying to make that one thing all age, and trying to make it incorporate the whole family, as Rebekah said earlier on about getting the whole family involved, getting the parents involved. I'm a big advocate as well for toddler ministry. I think it's amazing how much the very youngest can take in, what they can learn, the memory verses they can learn, the songs that they can learn. So it's trying to get all ages involved. So yeah, just don't compare, just do what you can, and do whatever you do well. And just the verse that I would like to leave as a verse of encouragement, and this is a verse that's always been a favourite of mine, and it has really encouraged me over the past 10 months, is Ephesians 3 verse 20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us. And each time I read this verse, I just think of someone giving like a toast to him who is able, to God who is able to do exceedingly more than we could ever hope, imagine, or dream. So do not limit God. Do not limit God in lockdown. Do not limit God whenever we come out of lockdown. Don't limit God with online content, with videos. He can do so much more than we could ever hope or imagine. And I would just encourage you to come to God in prayer and just to dream big and to ask God to do so much more with the kids ministry in your church than what you could even imagine. So yeah.
Terrific. One encouragement. What about you, Rebekah?
I think very simply just to encourage you to remember that you're not on your own. I think that it has felt like quite an isolated year and a lonely year at times, and all of us who've been involved in children's ministry in some way have probably felt frustrated and discouraged at times. And I know with me there's even been a sense of guilt with that sometimes, a kind of a guilt of I don't know what I'm doing and I should, or I'm not doing enough and I should be doing more, but actually just kind of being okay with the fact that we can only do so much and at the minute, and that it's okay if we can't do all that we think or we should be doing, and all we can do is our best in that. And I think just also remembering too the perspective that God is still at work during this time, and that things will change again and open up, and that idea that God will, he who began a good work will carry it to completion until the day of Christ Jesus, and he's still working on us and on the children's ministries we're involved in and the children that we have the privilege to serve, and that one day he will make it all clear in his time. So yeah, very simply, you're not on your own, and God's still working through all we're doing.
Yeah, super. Thanks so much. Those are two great verses that you both shared each for us to cling to and take away in the midst of such a challenging time. So thank you both so much. Thank you, Julieanne. Thank you, Rebekah, for taking the time to share with us today. And thank you for tuning in to watching this, whoever you are. And I really hope and pray that this has been a blessing and encouragement to you. I'm sure it has been. And we wish you well, and we're continuing to pray for you as you continue to serve the Lord over this next number of months, in spite of the tricky conditions that we find ourselves in. So God bless, and have a great week.